The sting of betrayal cuts deep. When someone you trusted turns against you, when respect is replaced with cruelty, or when kindness is met with malice, every fiber of your being screams for justice. The natural response is retaliation, to strike back, to make them feel the same pain they inflicted upon you. But what if this instinct, as natural as it feels, is actually the weakest response you could choose? What if true power lies not in revenge, but in something far more profound? The ancient Stoics understood something about human nature that modern society has largely forgotten. They recognized that the desire for revenge, while emotionally satisfying in the moment, ultimately chains us to our pain and gives others control over our inner peace. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca faced their own betrayals, political enemies, and personal attacks. Yet, they developed a philosophy that transforms victimhood into victory through the most unexpected means: complete indifference to those who would harm us. When someone hurts you, they are making a calculated investment in your emotional response. They expect anger, tears, retaliation, or at minimum, acknowledgement of their power to affect your life. Every moment you spend consumed with thoughts of revenge, every sleepless night plotting their downfall, every conversation where you rehash their wrongs, these are dividends they collect on their initial investment of cruelty. They live rent-free in your mind while going about their lives, often completely unaware of the emotional real estate they occupy in your thoughts. The Stoic approach flips this dynamic entirely. Instead of feeding their expectations with your pain, you starve them of the very reaction they crave. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. This isn't passive submission or weakness disguised as wisdom. This is the active choice to refuse participation in their game entirely. When you respond to cruelty with indifference, to betrayal with continued focus on your own growth, you rob them of their intended victory. Consider the psychology at play. Most people who hurt others do so from a place of their own pain, insecurity, or need for control. They strike out because they feel powerless in some aspect of their lives, and your suffering temporarily alleviates their own feelings of inadequacy. When you refuse to provide that satisfaction, when you remain unmoved by their attempts to drag you down to their level, you deny them the very thing they were seeking. They become like someone shouting into an empty room, their voice echoing back to them with no audience to validate their anger. But indifference alone, while powerful, is only the beginning of the Stoic path to ultimate revenge. The next step involves a complete redirection of energy. Every ounce of mental and emotional resources you would have spent on retaliation gets channeled into something far more devastating to your enemies: your own success and growth. The Stoics believed that living well was not just the best revenge, but the only revenge worth pursuing. Think about the mathematics of this approach. If someone wrongs you and you spend the next year plotting against them, networking to turn others against them, or simply dwelling on their actions, you have effectively given them a year of your life. They have successfully stolen 365 days of potential growth, learning, relationship building, and personal development. Even if your revenge succeeds, you emerge from the experience smaller than when you began, having invested your precious time in destruction rather than creation. The alternative is breathtaking in its elegance. Instead of diminishing yourself through thoughts of revenge, you pour all that energy into becoming someone they could never touch. You focus on developing skills they don't possess, building relationships they could never access, and achieving levels of success that place you in an entirely different sphere of existence. The person who once seemed so important in their ability to hurt you becomes increasingly irrelevant as you ascend to heights they cannot reach. This transformation often happens gradually, almost without notice. You begin reading more, learning new skills, exercising regularly, building meaningful connections, pursuing opportunities that once seemed out of reach. Months pass, and gradually you realize that you haven't thought about the person who hurt you in weeks. When their name comes up in conversation, you feel nothing: no anger, no pain, just the mild disinterest you might feel hearing about a stranger's problems. They have become what the Stoics would call an external thing, something that has no power to affect your inner peace or derail your progress. The beauty of this approach reveals itself when they inevitably learn of your success. They expected to see you broken, struggling, perhaps even seeking their forgiveness or approval. Instead, they discover that you have moved so far beyond their reach that their original offense seems almost quaint in retrospect. The promotion you earned, the relationships you built, the skills you developed, the inner peace you cultivated, none of these would have existed if you had spent your time and energy on revenge. They inadvertently became the catalyst for your transformation into someone far better than you might have become otherwise. Epictetus, himself a former slave who understood persecution and powerlessness better than most, taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This principle becomes the foundation for emotional freedom. When you truly internalize this truth, you realize that no one can actually hurt you without your permission. They can harm your body, damage your reputation, or steal your possessions, but your inner self, your values, your peace, your sense of purpose remains inviolate unless you choose to surrender it. This understanding leads to what might seem like a paradox. The less you care about what others do to you, the stronger you become. Anger, resentment, and the desire for revenge are emotional chains that bind you to the past and to people who don't deserve space in your present. When you master these emotions, when you choose calm over chaos and focus over fury, you discover a level of personal power that your enemies cannot comprehend. The Stoics practiced specific techniques to develop this emotional mastery. They regularly contemplated the temporary nature of all things, including both pleasure and pain. They reminded themselves that the opinions and actions of others have no power to diminish their inherent worth as human beings. They practiced seeing difficult people and situations as training exercises, opportunities to strengthen their character and practice virtue in challenging circumstances. This mindset shift changes everything. The person who betrayed you is no longer an enemy to be defeated, but a teacher who showed you where your emotional vulnerabilities lay. The colleague who sabotaged your project becomes the reason you developed better documentation and communication skills. The friend who spread rumors about you becomes the catalyst for you to evaluate the quality of your relationships and surround yourself with people of higher character. Living this philosophy requires daily practice and unwavering commitment to your own growth. It means choosing to see obstacles as opportunities, viewing criticism as information rather than attack, and treating setbacks as redirections rather than defeats. It means waking up each morning with a clear sense of your own values and priorities. Rather than defining your day by reaction to what others do or don't do, the ultimate test of this approach comes when you encounter the person who hurt you again. If you have truly embraced the Stoic path, this encounter becomes a moment of profound realization. You see them clearly, perhaps for the first time, without the distortion of anger or hurt. You might notice how small their concerns seem compared to the larger purposes you've discovered in your life. You might feel genuine compassion for the pain that drove them to hurt others. Most importantly, you recognize that they no longer have any power to affect your emotional state. This moment represents complete victory, not over them, but over the parts of yourself that once made you vulnerable to their actions. You have become someone they cannot touch, not because you've built walls or armor, but because you've developed the internal strength that makes their weapons irrelevant. They remain trapped in the same patterns of thought and behavior that led them to hurt you originally, while you have evolved beyond their reach. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond your relationship with those who wronged you. As you develop emotional mastery and focus on constant growth, you become more resilient in all areas of life. Professional setbacks don't devastate you because you've learned to see them as temporary and often beneficial redirections. Relationship conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding rather than battles to be won. Financial challenges become puzzles to solve rather than disasters to endure. Perhaps most importantly, you stop attracting the kind of people who hurt you in the first place. When you operate from a position of inner strength and clear boundaries, when you respond to negativity with calm and focus, You naturally repel those who seek easy targets for their own unresolved pain. You begin attracting people who share your commitment to growth, integrity, and mutual respect. The ancient Stoics understood that true freedom comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from mastering internal responses. They knew that the highest form of victory is not defeating others, but transcending the need for external validation or revenge. They practiced this philosophy in the face of exile, imprisonment, loss of fortune, and threats to their lives, proving that inner peace and personal power are available to anyone willing to do the necessary work. In our modern world, filled with social media drama, workplace politics, and personal betrayals, the Stoic approach to revenge offers something revolutionary: a way to transform pain into power, betrayal into growth, and enemies into irrelevant footnotes in the story of your ascending life. The person who hurt you expected to write themselves into your narrative as a villain. Instead, through your commitment to growth and indifference to their actions, they become nothing more than a brief chapter that led to your next level of development. Your peace becomes their defeat. Your success becomes their irrelevance. Your growth becomes the ultimate demonstration that they never had the power to diminish you. They only had the power you temporarily gave them through your attention and emotional investment. When you reclaim that power and redirect it toward your own flourishing, you discover that the best revenge was never revenge at all. It was always the decision to become someone so far beyond their reach that their original offense becomes meaningless in the context of the life you've built. This is the Stoic path. Not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of response. Not the denial of pain, but the transformation of that pain into something beautiful and powerful. Not the forgetting of wrongs, but the recognition that your energy is too valuable to waste on anything that doesn't contribute to your growth and peace. In the end, those who hurt you become the unwitting architects of your greatest victories, the inadvertent catalysts for your transformation into someone they could never have imagined you becoming.